Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you could save you from financial ruin, emotional devastation, and years of legal warfare that will leave you broke, broken, and bitter. I've spent over 2 decades in the trenches of high-stakes divorce cases. I've watched intelligent, successful people walk into my office thinking they understand what divorce means, only to discover they've entered a chess game where they don't even know the rules. And by the time they figure it out, they've already lost half their wealth, their children's respect, and sometimes their sanity. Today, I'm going to give you the brutal truth about what you need to do before you even think about filing those papers. This isn't feel-good advice from some relationship guru who's never seen the inside of a courtroom. This is battlefield intelligence from someone who's watched thousands of marriages explode in spectacular fashion. Hit that like button if you want to protect yourself from becoming another casualty in the divorce wars. Let me start with a statistic that should terrify you. 95% of people who walk into a divorce attorney's office are learning about the marriage contract for the first time. Think about that. You signed a legal document that governs your finances, your assets, your children, and your future, and you have no idea what it actually says. That's like buying a house without reading the mortgage terms, then acting surprised when the bank forecloses. Except worse, because your spouse isn't just a creditor, they're someone who knows every weakness, every financial vulnerability, every emotional trigger you have, and they're about to weaponize all of it. Here's the first harsh reality. The moment you decide you want a divorce, you're entering a war zone. And in war, preparation isn't just important. It's the difference between victory and complete annihilation. Most people approach divorce like they're planning a weekend getaway. They think they'll have a civilized conversation, divide things fairly, and move on with their lives. That's not divorce, that's fantasy. Real divorce is psychological warfare with a legal framework, and if you're not prepared, you're going to get destroyed. The documentation strategy. Your financial life depends on it. Before you even whisper the word divorce to your spouse, you need to become a forensic accountant of your own life. I'm talking about documentation that goes back years, not months. Every bank statement, every investment account, every business record, every tax return, every asset, every debt, every financial transaction, everything. Why? Because the moment your spouse realizes this is serious, those documents start disappearing faster than evidence at a crime scene. I've seen people liquidate retirement accounts, transfer assets to relatives, create fake debts, and hide money in ways that would impress organized crime bosses. You need 3 years of complete financial records. Not summaries, not approximations, complete records. Bank statements, credit card statements, loan documents, mortgage papers, insurance policies, retirement account statements, business financial records if either of you owns a business, tax returns, and investment account statements. Comment below and tell me, did you know that hiding assets during divorce is considered fraud? Most people don't, and it costs them everything. Here's something that will shock you. The average person going through divorce discovers assets they never knew existed, or more commonly, discovers that assets they thought they owned have mysteriously vanished. That beach house your spouse inherited? Turns out it was transferred to their sibling last year. That business you thought was struggling? The books show massive profits that somehow never made it to your joint accounts. This isn't paranoia. This is standard operating procedure in contested divorces. Your spouse isn't necessarily evil, but they're protecting their interests. And if you're not doing the same, you're playing poker while they're playing chess. The asset protection timeline. Why timing is everything. Most people think about protecting their assets after they've already decided to divorce. That's like putting on a seatbelt after you've crashed. Technically correct, but completely useless. Asset protection needs to happen before the relationship deteriorates, which means it should happen before you need it. But since most people don't have that luxury, you need to understand the legal timelines that govern asset division. In most jurisdictions, there are specific look-back periods for asset transfers. Courts will scrutinize any major financial moves you made in the months or years before filing for divorce. Move money around after you've decided to divorce, and you'll look like you're hiding assets. Don't move money around, and you might lose everything anyway. This is why documentation is so critical. You need to establish a baseline of what existed before the marriage turned toxic. You need proof of separate property, proof of inheritance, proof of premarital assets, and proof of any legitimate business transactions. The business owner's nightmare. If you own a business, divorce isn't just personal. It's an existential threat to everything you've built. I've watched business owners lose companies they spent decades building because they didn't understand how business valuation works in divorce proceedings. Your spouse doesn't need to understand your business to destroy it. They just need a good attorney and a forensic accountant. They'll claim the business is worth more than it is, demand immediate cash settlements you can't afford, and force you to liquidate assets or take on debt that cripples your operations. Before you file for divorce, you need a business valuation from a qualified professional. Not an estimate, not a guess based on last year's revenues, a formal valuation that will stand up in court. You also need to understand the difference between marital and separate business property, which is more complicated than most people realize. Comment and let me know. Are you a business owner? Do you know what your business is actually worth in a divorce scenario? The child strategy. When love becomes leverage. If you have children, divorce becomes infinitely more complex and emotionally devastating. Children aren't just people you love in the legal system. They're leverage points that determine financial obligations, living arrangements, and long-term life outcomes. Most parents go into custody battles thinking the court will prioritize what's best for the children. That's theoretically true, but practically naive. Courts make decisions based on evidence, documentation, and legal arguments, not on who loves the children more or who's a better parent in some abstract sense. Before you file for divorce, you need to document your relationship with your children. Photos, school records, medical appointments you've attended, extracurricular activities you've supported, evidence of daily caregiving responsibilities, everything that demonstrates your active involvement in their lives. You also need to understand the financial implications of different custody arrangements. Child support isn't just a moral obligation. It's a mathematical calculation based on income, custody time, and state guidelines. The difference between having your children 40% of the time versus 60% of the time can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of their childhood. The emotional warfare. Preparation divorce brings out the absolute worst in people. I've seen spouses who once loved each other engage in psychological terrorism that would make military interrogators uncomfortable. They'll use your children, your finances, your career, your family relationships, and your deepest vulnerabilities as weapons. You need to prepare for this psychologically and practically. That means therapy, not couples counseling, individual therapy with someone who understands high conflict divorce. You need emotional support systems that are completely separate from your spouse. You need professional advisors who work exclusively for you. Most importantly, you need to understand that everything you say and do from the moment you decide to divorce will potentially be used against you in court. Every text message, every email, every social media post, every financial transaction, every parenting decision, everything becomes evidence. Like this video, if you're starting to understand why most people are completely unprepared for divorce. The technology audit. Your digital life is evidence. We live in a digital world, which means your entire life is documented electronically. Your phone contains years of text messages, photos, location data, and communication records. Your computer has financial records, email correspondence, and browsing history. Your social media profiles show your lifestyle, your relationships, and your priorities. All of this becomes discoverable evidence in a divorce proceeding. That means your spouse's attorney can demand access to your devices, your accounts, and your digital history. They can use your own data to demonstrate infidelity, hidden assets, poor parenting, or lifestyle choices that support their legal arguments. Before you file for divorce, you need to audit your digital footprint. Change passwords on all accounts, enable two-factor authentication, and understand what information exists that could be used against you. Clean up social media profiles, secure confidential business information, and document any evidence of your spouse's misconduct that might be relevant to the case. The professional team, Assembly Divorce, isn't a solo sport. You need a team of professionals who understand high-conflict legal proceedings and who work exclusively in your interests. This includes an attorney, obviously, but also a financial advisor, an accountant, a therapist, and potentially a forensic accountant, a business valuator, a child psychologist, and a private investigator. Most people try to economize on professional help, which is like performing surgery on yourself to save money on medical bills. False economy doesn't begin to describe how stupid this is. A good attorney will save you more money than they cost. A good forensic accountant will find hidden assets that more than pay their fees. A good therapist will help you make rational decisions instead of emotional ones that destroy your case. Comment below, what's the biggest mistake you think people make when preparing for divorce? The financial war chest divorce is expensive. Not just the attorney fees and court costs. The entire process of separating your life from someone else's life costs money. You need temporary housing, duplicate household items, separate insurance, separate bank accounts, and enough liquid cash to survive while the legal process plays out. Most people grossly underestimate these costs. They think they'll spend a few $1,000s on legal fees and be done in a few months. In reality, contested divorces can take years and cost tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Before you file, you need a financial war chest that can sustain you through the entire process. This includes money for legal fees, living expenses, expert witnesses, and unexpected costs that will inevitably arise. If you can't afford to fight, you can't afford to win. The negotiation psychology. Here's something most people don't understand. Divorce settlements aren't about fairness. They're about leverage, patience, and strategic thinking. The spouse who's more desperate, more emotional, or more financially vulnerable will make concessions they'll regret for the rest of their lives. You need to understand your spouse's pressure points and vulnerabilities. just as they'll be analyzing yours. What do they want most? What are they most afraid of losing? What timeline constraints do they have? What financial pressures are they facing? This isn't about being cruel. It's about being realistic. Your spouse is going to try to use your emotional attachments, your time constraints, and your financial pressures against you. If you're not thinking strategically, you're going to make decisions based on exhaustion, frustration, or desperation that will cost you for decades. The post-divorce reality. Check, let me tell you what life looks like after divorce. Because most people have completely unrealistic expectations. Your standard of living will decrease, probably dramatically. You'll have 2 households to maintain instead of 1, but the same income to fund them both. You'll have legal obligations that continue for years or decades, especially if you have children. You'll discover that divorce doesn't solve relationship problems. It just changes their legal framework. If you couldn't communicate effectively during marriage, you're not going to communicate effectively during co-parenting. If you couldn't manage finances together, dividing those finances won't make either of you better money managers. Most people think divorce will make them happier, but the research shows that's rarely true in the short term. Divorce is traumatic, expensive, and emotionally devastating even when it's the right decision. You need to be prepared for that reality, not the fantasy version where you immediately start your new life and everything works out perfectly. The strategic filing decision, when you file for divorce, matters enormously. Filing first gives you certain strategic advantages. You get to choose the jurisdiction, set the initial timeline, and frame the initial legal arguments. But filing first also shows your hand and gives your spouse time to prepare their counter-strategy. The timing of your filing affects asset protection, custody arrangements, and financial outcomes. File too early, and you might not be adequately prepared. File too late, and your spouse might have already implemented their own strategic plan. This is why you need professional legal advice before you make any moves. Every situation is different, and the optimal strategy depends on factors that most people can't evaluate themselves. Hit that like button if this information is opening your eyes to how complex divorce really is. The Custody Documentation Project. If you have children, custody determination will be the most important and most emotionally charged aspect of your divorce. Courts make custody decisions based on evidence, not assumptions or promises or good intentions. You need to document everything related to your children: who takes them to school, who attends parent-teacher conferences, who handles medical appointments, who coaches their sports teams, who helps with homework, who handles discipline, who makes major decisions about their lives. You need evidence of your involvement in their daily lives, evidence of your spouse's parenting strengths and weaknesses, and evidence of what arrangement will actually serve the children's best interests. This means photos, school records, medical records, communication with teachers and coaches, and detailed logs of parenting responsibilities. Most parents think their love for their children is obvious and will speak for itself in court. That's not how legal proceedings work. Love isn't evidence. Actions are evidence, and you need documentation of those actions. The asset. Hiding detection. Your spouse might be hiding assets, and you might not even know it. This happens in more divorces than most people realize, and it's not limited to wealthy couples. People hide money in safety deposit boxes, transfer assets to relatives, create fake debts, underreport business income, and use dozens of other methods to conceal wealth. If you suspect your spouse is hiding assets, you need forensic accounting help before you file for divorce. This involves analyzing financial records, tracing money transfers, investigating business relationships, and identifying assets that should be part of the marital estate. The discovery process in divorce proceedings gives you legal tools to find hidden assets, but you need to know what to look for and how to ask the right questions. This is specialized work that requires professional expertise. Comment and tell me what warning signs might indicate a spouse is hiding assets. The social media strategy. Your social media presence will be scrutinized during divorce proceedings. Every photo, every post, every comment, every location check-in becomes potential evidence about your lifestyle, your priorities, your relationships, and your character. Before you file for divorce, clean up your social media presence. Remove photos that could be misinterpreted. Avoid posting anything about your relationship or your divorce. And understand that everything you share online could end up in court documents. This also applies to your children's social media presence and your friends' and family members' social media activity. Photos of you at parties, expensive purchases, travel, or new relationships can all be used to support arguments about your fitness as a parent, your hidden income, or your priorities. The insurance and benefits audit divorce affects all of your insurance coverage and employee benefits. Health insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, retirement benefits, stock options, and other workplace benefits all need to be reviewed and potentially modified. You need to understand what benefits you'll lose access to after divorce, what benefits you can maintain, and what new coverage you'll need to obtain. This affects your immediate financial planning and your long-term financial security. Many people don't realize that losing access to their spouse's employer-provided health insurance can cost hundreds of dollars per month in individual coverage. Life insurance beneficiaries need to be changed, but not until the divorce is final and any legal obligations are satisfied. The tax implications. Strategy. Divorce has massive tax implications that most people don't consider until it's too late. The timing of your divorce affects your tax filing status, your eligibility for various deductions and credits, and your responsibility for taxes on jointly filed returns. Asset division isn't just about who gets what, it's about who gets what after taxes. Retirement accounts, investment accounts, real estate, and business interests all have different tax implications when they are divided in divorce proceedings. You might think you're getting half of everything, but if your half consists of assets with high tax liabilities while your spouse gets assets with no tax implications, you're not actually getting an equal division. The emergency planning protocol. Some divorces become high conflict situations very quickly. If your spouse becomes threatening, starts hiding assets, or begins using your children as weapons, you need an emergency protocol that protects your safety and your interests. This means having a separate bank account your spouse can't access, having copies of important documents stored securely outside your home, having a safety plan if domestic violence becomes an issue, and having professional support systems in place. Most people don't want to think about worst-case scenarios, but divorce brings out the worst in people, and you need to be prepared for your spouse to become someone you don't recognize. Hit that like button and share this video if you think more people need this. Information before they make costly mistakes. The long-term financial planning divorce doesn't just affect your immediate financial situation, it affects your long-term financial security. Retirement planning, college savings, insurance needs, and investment strategies all need to be reconsidered in light of your new financial reality. You need to understand how property division affects your net worth, how spousal support obligations affect your cash flow, and how child support responsibilities affect your long-term financial planning. Many people make short-term decisions during divorce that have devastating long-term consequences. This is why you need professional financial advice throughout the divorce process. Not just legal advice. Your attorney protects your legal interests, but a financial advisor helps you understand the long-term implications of various settlement options. The business continuity planning. If you own a business, divorce threatens everything you've built. Business partnerships, client relationships, employee contracts, vendor relationships, and operational continuity can all be affected by divorce proceedings. You need a business continuity plan that protects your company regardless of how the divorce plays out. This might involve buy-sell agreements with business partners, key employee retention strategies, client communication plans, and operational procedures that don't depend on your spouse's involvement. Many business owners don't realize that divorce can force them to sell their business or take on debt that cripples their operations. Planning ahead gives you options and protects the livelihood you've worked years to build. The final reality. Check here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Most divorces are preventable tragedies caused by poor communication, unrealistic expectations, and the failure to treat marriage like the serious legal and financial partnership it actually is. But if you've reached the point where divorce is inevitable, your survival depends on preparation, professional help, and strategic thinking. This isn't about being vindictive or cruel. It's about protecting your interests and your children's futures in a legal system that doesn't care about your feelings. The people who do well in divorce are the people who prepare thoroughly, think strategically, and make decisions based on long-term outcomes rather than short-term emotions. The people who get destroyed are the ones who approach divorce like it's a relationship conversation rather than a legal and financial battle. Comment below with the one piece of advice from this video that surprised you the most. Everything I've told you today comes from watching thousands of people navigate divorce proceedings. The ones who prepare do better than the ones who don't. The ones who understand the process do better than the ones who learn as they go. The ones who get professional help do better than the ones who try to handle it themselves. If you're facing divorce, don't be another casualty. Be strategic, be prepared, and be realistic about what you're facing. Your future self will thank you for the planning you do today. Make sure to like this video if it helped you understand what you're really facing. Subscribe for more hard truths about relationships, money, and legal realities that most people learn too late. And share this with anyone who might need this information before they make irreversible mistakes. Because in the divorce wars, knowledge isn't just power, it's survival.